it's another final to look forward to as far as the Indian cricket team, the men in blue, are concerned. They've advanced to the T20 World Cup 2024 final in the Windies now after beating England by an overwhelming 68 runs. And now the men in blue will take on South Africa at the Kensington Oval in Barbados. All eyes are on this mega clash because both of these teams have remained unbeaten throughout the tournament. India is making it to the championship match for the first time since 2014 in this format. Remember, they won, of course, the inaugural T20 World Cup in 2007, incidentally, in South Africa. Now, there could not be two more contrasting teams that are meeting for the final as far as the 2024 version is concerned. Take a look at the history behind both of these teams. That is going to make a difference as far as their mental makeup is concerned as well. So, India has been part of 12 ICC event finals before, including many others, barring the World Cup. But this is also their 7th ICC World Cup final. So, I'm talking about T20s and ODIs. South Africa, on the other side, have made it to their very first Men's World Cup final, ODI or the T20 International. But India has another type of ghost to exercise, which is of losing ICC trophy finals in regularity. They've now lost the last 5 ICC event finals that they were part of, including, of course, the Test Championship. On the other hand, South Africa was barely even making this stage. As I said, they have had the ghost of losing 2 T20 World Cup semis and 5 ODI World Cup semis as well. But here's another thing to keep in mind. Both sides are unbeaten in the tournament. India has managed 7 wins so far, but South Africa have managed 8 consecutive wins, and this is the joint longest streak in the format now. Let's also take a look at India's T20 World Cup record against South Africa, which has seen some intense battles over the years. Here's a quick summary of their head-to-head encounters as far as this tournament is concerned. So the first one, the inaugural World Cup was held in South Africa 2007, which India won. In that tournament, India won against the home team by 37 runs. In 2009, South Africa got a revenge by 12 runs in Nottingham. And India then went on to win the next 3 encounters that they have played. The 2010 one by 14 runs. In 2012, they won by only 1 run in Colombo. That match happened, tournament of course happened in Sri Lanka, if we can move forward as far as our graphics is concerned. And of course their most recent meeting in the T20 World Cup was way back in 2014 when India won by 6 wickets in Dhaka. So this is their first meeting as far as this tournament stage is concerned in 10 years. Overall in T20 international cricket, India and South Africa have faced each other 26 times since 2007. India has a slight upper hand, winning 14 of those matches, losing 11. 1 had no result. But this is where it all rests. The fact is, India haven't won an ICC event trophy in over 10 years now. They faced defeat in the 2023 ODI World Cup. Can they finally break that final jinx? We're joined by experts with us in just a bit to answer exactly that question, but also listen in to what kids in Mumbai have to say. Remember, our captain Rohit Sharma hails from Mumbai, and he would be looking for some relief from all of those drought questions this time around.
Despite a rain-washed match, India's victory over 68 runs over England has gotten people in India excited, especially for tomorrow's finals. In fact, we of course expected Men in Blue to get back World Cup, but now all eyes are on the T20 World Cup. What is your wish for Men in Blue right now?
I think India should win, and I think it will win.
Okay, and who is your favorite player?
In batting, Rohit Sharma, and in bowling, Jasprit Bumrah.
What are your expectations from tomorrow's match?
He hasn't performed well, but I think he should perform well in tomorrow's match.
What are the runs that you're expecting from Virat Kohli?
I think above 30 score will be nice.
Above 30 would be nice. आपके फेवरेट प्लेयर कौन है? क्रिकेट इंडियन क्रिकेट टीम से आपका क्या एक्सपेक्टेशन है?
मेरा फेवरेट प्लेयर रोहित शर्मा है और सिर्फ रोहित शर्मा से नहीं पूरे इंडियन टीम से मुझे एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि वो जीतेंगे, कप घर लाएंगे.
Let me go across to Deep Dasgupta, former India cricketer, and Jamie Alter, sports journalist and commentator, joining us on the show. I do thank you both for your time. Deep, let me begin with you. A lot needs to be spoken about as far as the history of the teams is concerned. As I mentioned, you've got India that is very, very regular at ICC tournament finals. They've made the Test T20 ODI World Cup finals recently now. And you've got South Africa on the other side that is in its first ICC World Cup final. So just how do you see that? How do you see the mental makeup of both the teams?
I think very different. Like you said, on one side, you've got India, which has been consistent, finalist. Like you mentioned, the WTC, then the 50 overs, and in general as well over the years. South Africa, so that makes South Africa a clear-cut underdog to a great extent, because the fact that they're playing their first ICC finals, so that makes them that much more dangerous if they are, thinking on those lines, as in, we are going in there as underdogs, nothing to lose. On the other hand, you've got India, who are clear favorites, to be honest, for these finals. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I think to a certain extent, it would be pressure on India, and South Africa would be kind of unshackled, provided they're thinking like that. You never know; it could be the other way around as well.
No, so let's talk a little bit more about the Proteas' mindset. How do you approach a final like this, having been called chokers for so many years, despite the talent that you have had? So if you were in the dressing room as a player or as the coaching staff, how do you approach a final like this, Deep?
I mean, for me, I guess the first thing I'd say is, listen, you got nothing to lose. I mean, looking at this whole environment where, the conditions are favors India, history favors India. There's so many things. I mean, just name it. It's kind of stacked in India's favor to that extent. So for South Africa, it's got nothing. I mean, they've got nothing to lose. I mean, just go out there, have fun, enjoy yourself. And they've got quality cricketers. I mean, from a very cricketing perspective, and leave aside the mental side of it and the psychological side of it. But if you look in from a cricket point of view, they've got a really good bowling side as well. Like India, might not be as potent as India, but if there is a bowling unit which is as rounded as India's, would be South Africa. They've got good seamers. You've got Mahajan, who's a Keshav Maharaj, sorry, who's a brilliant left arm spinner. Shamsi is doing well, and when I'm looking at their batting middle order, especially, I know they haven't really scored a lot of runs, which this tournament's been like that. It hasn't been a tournament for batters. But it seems like South Africa has got the best middle order to play the Indian spinners in these conditions, namely Klaasen, David Miller, Tristan Stubbs, Markram. And it's not that these four have played enough of these Indian spinners in Indian conditions in the IPL. So they are a good side, and let's not forget they are unbeaten like India as well.
Yeah. Jamie, how do you look at it? Will South Africa be able to play that free cricket that, we've got nothing to lose, as Deep is suggesting, or will the occasion be a little bit too heavy in their minds? And alternatively, how does India handle the ghost of not having won an ICC trophy in 11 years now?
That's a very good question. Look, I mean, I think it can be argued, and I'm sure Deep will agree here. There's no two more desperate teams, Shivani, to win an ICC trophy. I mean, yes, South Africa many will say, have sort of erased, 32 years of playing when it comes to World Cup. They haven't won it, but Markram's team has become the first men's team to get to a final. That in itself, I'm sure, has given countless cricket fans back in the Rainbow Nation a lot of joy. But when you stack it up against what other teams have achieved, Australia, India, even the West Indies have won this twice, they still don't have that trophy. 98 was when they won the first Champions Trophy.
Yeah.
Many cricket fans in South Africa won't even remember that, because it was a tournament that was not supposed to be big.
Yeah.
It was sort of created to boost associate nations, and it happened in Dhaka against West Indies, So against all that, exactly like Deep said, I'll agree with him. they don't have anything to lose, but then again, they've gone where no team from South Africa has ever gone. I agree with Deep. The bowling is second only to India, but Shivani, South African teams have always had great bowling attacks. They've always had great fielding sides, and they've had much better batsmen than this. So there is that question in a low-scoring World Cup against a top team like India, also unbeaten, a team that has gotten to many finals, hasn't won. Does that middle order have what it takes, like Deep mentioned, to crack India? Yes, but then again, you look at Akshar, you look at Kuldeep. Kuldeep had to wait 4 matches to get his chance. He, like Dubey, was picked for the matches in the West Indies, and the guy's taken what? 10 wickets in 3 matches, going at under 6 and over. It's going to be South Africa's biggest test. They've knocked off, I mean, Nepal by 1 run, Bangladesh 3 runs. They've done brilliantly to get here. But for me, with obviously the India bias aside, their biggest test is not just being in the final, it's coming up against Bumrah, Akshar, and Kuldeep, to my mind.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Indian bowling and just how brilliantly it has performed. But I do want Deep's thoughts on this as well. A lot has been said, Deep, about the new T20 mindset of the Indian team. Right? I was in Australia when they lost to England in that semi-final, and that is being seen as the tipping point of a change around as far as the T20 mindset is concerned. We've got a lot of players, including the captain, who has lost ICC finals under him. And a lot of players for whom this might be the final opportunity, if not in this format, in World Cups completely. So how do they handle that pressure, that ghost of not winning a title?
See, what has been really refreshing as far as the Indian team is concerned is their approach towards T20 cricket, which I thought the last game against England came a full circle. It was against England in 2022 in Adelaide, when I think Rohit and the team realized, you know what, the way we play T20 is not good enough. We need to change, and they have changed. So there is a huge difference in the Indian T20 side, maybe a couple of years ago from now. They're playing a lot more fearlessly. And I thought, and especially looking at the semis against England, I thought maybe semi-final, let's see now in a knockout situation, do they still play the same with the same method, and which they did. So I think that makes a huge difference in terms of the mindset. If you're going in there with that mindset, irrespective of what happens, we're going to play this form of cricket, and I think that will help in the long run. It has already changed how batters are playing, even though these aren't very high scoring conditions. But you still, when you look at these batters, even if India loses 2-3 wickets, you still have Hardik and Surya coming and playing freely. So I think that would have a domino effect in terms of whatever has happened in the past and how much the Indian team's thinking about this final.
And Jamie, you've also got Rahul Dravid, whose contract is coming to an end, isn't it? So this is a swan song of sorts for him too.
Absolutely, I love that. I love that quote he gave, in which he used the analogy of one of the mountaineers was asked, why do you want to climb Everest? He said, because it's there, And the same question, I understand, having been part of many press conferences, I understand sometimes these questions which we journalists ask can grate on the minds of cricketers. But I thought Rahul Dravid handled it very well. He said, we want to win it because it's just there, and it's so simple. But I think it gives. I mean, Deep has played with Rahul, so he'll know far more. It just sort of says maybe the calmness which he's sort of made peace with. It's been a rocky tenure. Yes, under the Dravid Rohit combo, they've got to many finals, but the fact remains they still haven't won. I know there's an Asia Cup, but let's get real. We Indian fans and journalists, we want the ICC trophy to come home. And I believe now finally, maybe it's because he knew my contract's not being renewed. Maybe that's played a fact. I absolutely agree with what Deep said, that awareness or the acceptance that, it's 2022 and we're falling behind lower ranked teams. I think Dravid's had a big part in that. And I hope that India wins for Rohit. I think on November 19th is a blot he desperately needs to erase, because the heart just went out to him. So selfless throughout that campaign. So I hope, of course, I hope everyone, but I hope for Rahul Dravid, for Rohit Sharma, for Virat Kohli, and also a word on Jasprit Bumrah. I think 90% of India's success has been the bowling, of which, I mean, there's no better bowler than Jasprit Bumrah.
Yeah, there's not much left to say as far as our Indian bowling is concerned. We know they're world class, they're the best possibly, and deaths over specialty for both Bumrah and Ashpreet. All of them have done really well. And then, of course, we've got that middle over bowlers that Jamie and you were talking about. But so let me talk about the batting, which is where we've seen the hiccups. Before I go to deep on this, Jamie, what do you think about the Virat Kohli question? Does it need to be addressed? Should he go back to number 3? Maybe Pant opens instead?
I have been one of the more vocal people to have said yes, but you know, Shivani, when you're 7-0, you don't make
Change. Okay.
Yes, it's been a very tough World Cup, like Deep mentioned, for batsmen. The New York leg was very, very tough. Only a couple Indian batsmen and even South African batsmen were able to sort of score runs there. But again, we moved to the West Indies. Not ideal, Shivani, but it's gotten better. I look at the two openers who are probably on their last legs as T20 cricketers. They're both playing the same role, Shivani. They've both bought in, and it's fantastic to even accept that they bought into that mentality. But the point is, one of them has 250 runs at 43 at a strike rate of 156. One has the lowest average for any Indian opener in any history, and he's struggled. I like the fact that Virat Kohli has not taken the easier route, which would have been to sort of buy time. He has bought in 100% as I see it, but the runs haven't come. It's a problem, but Shivani, when you're in the World Cup unbeaten, it's one more match. Whether he scores or not, I frankly don't care because the team is unbeaten. And yes, he's not had a massive role to play, but he's bought in. And for someone of that stature to put aside the ego and buy into the team mentality, I think that's very, very commendable.
Yeah, I think they've given him a role and he's bought into that role. And they're kind of moving ahead from having to rely on one or two names in the middle order, especially to deliver for you. A quick fire knock at the top, possibly more valuable than a 50 from Virat Kohli. I think that's the mentality from the team right now. So I see Deep nodding. So Deep, I want to ask you the other question then. What about the Shivam Dube question? Because that's the other spot that is being discussed. Now we've got replacements in the squad that can come in and can play the role that he's expected to play. So do you think that may be a change that the Indian team could look at, or as we all possibly are expecting, the final may not be the occasion where they will make any changes?
I don't think there'll be any changes, Shivani, to be honest. I think India has been unbeaten. Yes, Shivam has quietly got into that role because these conditions are very alien to what Shivam Dube is known to do. Right? He's more of a batter who would come into those middle overs, especially against spin, and hit those big sixes. But this World Cup has not been about sixes. So it's been very different in terms of conditions. And Shivam, last two games, I mean, not the England one, but Australia and before that, he's played those, cameos, which is what is expected of him. It's not expected of him to get 70, 80. What is expected is those cameos. Yes, you can say you were expecting more. But I believe there won't be any changes. Should go with the same 11. Give those guys the confidence. Shivam Dube might have a big role in taking down someone like, Keshav Maharaj during the middle overs. Keshav's been absolutely brilliant for South Africa. So a left-hander in that middle order, Rishabh and him, might have a role to play, not just Keshav Maharaj, but also against Shamsi.
All right. Since I do have you, let me ask you about the bowlers. They've been brilliant, of course. Not much that hasn't been said so far. Death over bowling is absolutely fantastic. Any mini matchups that you're looking forward to? Because this is also a South African batting lineup, as you said, which is the most explosive in the middle overs. So any mini matchups between the larger contests that you're looking forward to, Deep?
That's a really interesting one. So obviously, I mean, a lot of people ask which phase would be important. Listen, it's a 20-over game. So all phases are important, right? It's not a test match or something. So every phase is important. But the key matchups, as you rightly mentioned, for me would be, as I mentioned before, that middle order and Indian spinners. Again, namely Klaasen, Miller, Markram, and Tristan Stubbs against the three Indian spinners. So that would be a very, very crucial matchup. And we're talking about Barbados. Barbados day game okay, the reference point would be India versus Afghanistan. Even though India got 181, but I thought India scored 15 or 20 more than par. So that was still a 160, 165 kind of a pitch. So Barbados, even though it has been comparatively high scoring, but during a day game, so 165. So there would be some help for the spinners. So I think that matchup becomes very, very crucial. That middle order, the South African middle order, the Indian spinners. And obviously, right at the top, the other important batter that you got to be mindful of, the South African batter would be Quinton de Kock. I mean, he's a match winner, right? And obviously, we have Bumrah. So, I mean, goes without saying. I mean, Bumrah is an absolute legend. He's a once in a generation talent. And yeah,
All right. Just enough time for final comments. Jamie, what does your heart tell you? Can India do it this time?
Heart always says yes. It's the
Okay,
mind.
what does
and
your mind tell
sometimes-
you?
No, the mind. No, I think this is that rare instance where again I'm not undermining South Africa. Second best bowling attack after India, but the heart and mind are now aligned. Unlike November 19th, and I think it's India's World Cup. 11 years is for us Indian fans. It's as long as 32 years for South Africa. So bahut ho gaya. I think it's going to be a good day in Barbados.
Right. Deep, what do you feel? What's your gut telling you?
I think the drought on 29th, as in tomorrow, we might see the drought being over as far as ICC silverware is concerned. I think this team has worked hard.